I do wonder sometimes. I do wonder if it is human nature to never learn from your mistakes. Now, they say we should learn from history. But the world looked on back in 2017 when Grenfell Tower was ablaze and sadly 70 people's lives were lost. Now, Spain, for instance, certainly were not paying attention, did nothing at all. Now, there have been surveys and what have you in the United Kingdom to see what other buildings have this cladding on. Well, you see, there are 100 buildings in the UK that still have the Grenfell style cladding. But did you realise there was almost 10,000 buildings that have, well, cladding that is deemed to be unsafe and don't comply with, well, fire regulations, what have you, associated fire risks. Well, we know that the people of Grenfell Tower, the Grenfell Association, they warned that there was going to be a problem. There's an issue, you know, for fire regulations and stuff. There was no sprinkler systems, etc., etc. And then we had this fire, and it killed 70-odd people. We should be learning. We should be looking and analysing what's going on. But you see, no. A huge Grenfell-style apartment fire in Spain. This was in Valencia. It was just yesterday, on Friday. Then, in a tragic yet, well, so predictable twist of events, Valencia, Spain's third largest city, witnessed a catastrophic fire in an upscale apartment block in the Campanar district, and has claimed at least 9 lives. Now, they did think it was 10, but in fact, there's still people missing. But they know 9 so far. Now, this incident is an area reminiscent of the 2017 Grenfell Tower blaze in London, but apparently humanity's ability to learn from past tragedies is as reliable as a chocolate teapot, you could say. So within minutes, due to the strong winds, it will reignite concerns over the use of potentially dangerous materials in construction. And I've worked in this construction. I've done cladding using those materials. Now, unfortunately, we have got this strange affiliation, this love for polyurethane and polyethylene insulation products such as Kingspan and Dow Chemicals and what's the other one there, Celcon and what have you. Now, although those products are retarded, they only give you more time. But if you get them hot enough, they're still going to burn. You know? And then we use this expanding foam around our windows and to fill the gaps between the insulation and stuff. That stuff is not retarded. No. Straight out the can. Goes up like a touch paper, it does. As you see, this flipping polyurethane insulation, no matter what happens, it still finds its way into our homes and into these buildings. Might meet IP9 or whatever it is, regarding fire retardants, what have you, but it's how long does it take you to get out of these buildings if everybody's panicking? It might not be enough time. We saw that in Grenfell. So yes, the world looked on while Grenfell was ablaze in 2017 and did nothing to tackle the issue since. Yes, like I say, we had surveys and what have you. But what I find disgraceful is that in the UK, there are so many buildings that have the same flipping cladding. And not just the cladding on the buildings, but the flipping insulation is used in your homes. Now, the fact is that some combustible urethane insulation is in new builds and in retrofits. Now, I know what they can say, well, that stuff don't come to light. Well, according to the government organisation, rigid polyurethane and polycyanurate foams will, when ignited, burn rapidly. They've got to be ignited first. It takes a bit of time because they carbonise. A bit like Harrison Ford. They carbonise, so that sort of protects the surface, protects from igniting. But if there's enough heat, enough oxygen, what have you, it will still ignite or burn rapidly, produce intense heat, then smoke and gases which are irritating, flammable, or toxic. Obviously, toxic. We saw what happened with Grenfell. As with other organic materials, but most significant gas is usually the carbon monoxide. The other chemicals basically affect you afterwards, really, in most cases. But you see, some of these gases that are given off are deadly toxic, like cyanides, for instance. Now, when I was working on Cat Hill in this place here, this is Desmond House in Cat Hill, on Cat Hill, in East Barnet it is. So when we've got Tony Trippett was the architect, and you can see on the side there's actually like two T's on the side in blue, but that's now destined to be 20 years later to be recladded, ripping it all off. Now this particular panel is not the same as what they used on Grenfell Tower. Now, this particular panel is it's resin plan by a company called Eterna. We had the contract for, I was subcontracting to do this cladding. It's nine floors, including the parapet. A fantastic butchers or a baker's blue. I can't remember now, but they made a fantastic cheese and onion pasties. Oh, so good. Anyway, but this particular has got this resin plan panel. Now the panels on there are like a thick form mica. Think of that plasticky finish you get on your worktops, just that bit. And I think it's about 9 to 10 millimeters thick it was, all riveted onto aluminium rails. Now, the thing about that is, you see, you can imagine there's no fire retardants there whatsoever. And there's an air gap behind. So effectively you've got a flue all the way around the building. And there's fire breaks on each floor. I know, because I was fitting them. But they were ventilated fire breaks. And they only did anything if they were in contact with the fire itself. So basically what is like a grid, a plate of metal with loads of little holes in it, a bit like a zinc plate, and it's coated in a material. So as soon as a fire hits it, it expands and blocks off the oxygen, so it does no flue. The problem is until it actually gets the fire anywhere near it, the fire's already too hot, and the panel will be burning on the inside and the outside. So it does pretty much nothing. And on every single concrete floor plate, as you're going up, there was a cladding on there by Dow Chemicals, and that one we were pretty certain, can't guarantee it, but we were pretty certain that it gave off cyanide gas when it was a high density insulation, a blue foam insulation, and that was fixed on the ends of the concrete pads. But the rock wall insulation is absolutely fine. You're not going to catch that light. No. You see, we don't learn, do we? We just do not learn. This was back in 2002. So how many more buildings are cladded in these materials? We know at least 10,000 buildings are at risk of fire. And we know there's 100-odd buildings that have that exact Grenfell cladding on it. They have not been replaced yet. No. It's about the money, you see. Well, you see, Grenfell's covered in that more dangerous panel, so we're led to believe, because the council wanted to save some money. And the fire regulation approval of the panel that was supposed to be going on to Grenfell Tower wasn't put on Grenfell Tower. Well, this is pretty much, you can see in this diagram, I'll give you some idea what's going on there. So you've got your wall itself, you've got your insulation material attached to the wall, and then you've got an air gap. But the other way of doing it is if you've got the panel like Grenfell, where the insulation is actually a part of the panel itself, and it's basically in reverse, but you've still got the air gap right behind the actual insulation material. It's the insulation material itself, and it can ignite. Now, products such as Kingspan and Celcon are constructed with polyurethane, but I can't say whether or not they are retarded. Well, I'm pretty certain they are. I know they are fire retarded. But everything it's how much time it gives you until it does ignite. But you can imagine how much time you need to get out one of these buildings if everyone's panicking. Now, the main issue I see is the draft caused by the air gap and these ventilated fire breaks I just explained. Now, I know this because I've worked on them in the early 2000s. This was on Desmond House, Cat Hill, but also in Grays and Thurrock. We did 3 blocks of flats, 14 stories high there. Those were a Granitex panel. I'm pretty certain they would not catch a light. They're effectively like a cement board with. They've got resin on them, mind. There's a resin. There was a white granite resin bonded onto the surface, but I very much doubt they'd actually ignite. So I'm sure they'd be fine. So, but the product by Eternit though, the resin plan, that is basically like a thick formmica, solid resin, and it's highly flammable, and rather intense feel, like it was on Desmond House. But what gets me is we put these materials in our homes. It wouldn't take much for it to ignite. And this foam stuff we shove around our windows and stuff, that stuff, you just put light against it. It's horrendous. You know? It's overused. Now, these materials are often in conjunction, like say, with PU expanding foam, and the stuff is like a touch paper. Now, the fire in Valencia that broke out seemingly unremarkable on Thursday evening. Sorry, it wasn't Friday, Thursday evening. Swiftly turned into a 12-story residential block into a towering inferno, leaving over 100 people homeless and scrambling for safety. Survivors, like the 53-year-old Jose Carlos Perez, is that right? Found themselves with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Their possessions and homes reduced to ashes, and local community in the heartwarming. This is the thing, people do get together, don't they? They did at Grenfell. People got together to help. And, you know, that's when you see real humanity. You don't see it from the governments, do you? No. A bunch of asses is what they are. And I'm not talking about the furry kind either. So anyway, the local community, in a heartwarming display of solidarity, rushed to donate clothes, toys and medicines, proving that empathy is not entirely extinct. That's lovely, you know. Can you imagine that, though? How frightened these people must have been. The cause of the fire remains a mystery. It's a mystery. We know about Grenfell. We know it was an electrical fault started at, I think it was a fridge, wasn't it, or something? The BBC and the Sky and what have you haven't even mentioned it. I haven't seen it anyway. I don't know if you have. But to me, it feels a little bit like, hang on, we must not mention this because it'll remind people of Grenfell Tower, what happened there. And it'll remind people of how inept the government is. It's in their day, you know, and let's look at the Sky, they're all Tories, let's be honest. So, what do we expect, I suppose? So anyway, while the rest of us are left wondering if innovative aluminium material is just a fancy way of saying fire hazard. Yeah. There's nothing really that innovative about it. It's basically an installation bonded on the back of the 3mm aluminium sheet. That's all it is, really. It's not necessarily the materials that is actually the problem. The problem is really the construction method and providing it oxygen. You know? You've got to block its flow of oxygen before it can burn through the panel. Because obviously the fire must have been started inside. It's not going to be some flipping bird, is it? Having a fag or something. No. A resident has obviously started the fire somehow, or it's an electrical fault, or gas even. If they've got gas in there, probably not. We should learn by this. You know, it's not rocket science, is it? It really isn't. You know? Yet we use the materials that we know full well are dangerous. The government's own organisation for fire safety tests tell us that rigid polyurethane and polyisocyrenate foams will, when ignited, burn rapidly and produce intense heat. But do we learn? Do we flippin' ever? You tell me. Please leave it in the comments down below. But please beat that like button because it helps the channel, you know. Well, I mean, if you want to support the channel, you can do it on Patreon or buy us a coffee. And it is very much appreciated. We're also doing a rewilding here in France to try and combat all the gases and the toxins given off by burning apartment blocks. Okay, that's not the reason, really. But anyway. There's a link down below, which you can basically buy a tree. And I'll plant that tree on your behalf. And I'll make a sign to go with the tree. It could be have your name on it, or it could be a memory of a loved one, pet, or whatever you like. So anyway, it's time for me to go. Say toodaloo, you know. So toodaloo.